In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some big temperature swings as we're going from warmer temperatures over to a really strong cool down, back to warmer temperatures, and back to another strong cool down. This will also bring major storms across the nation as we see these big changes bring frontal boundaries that are going to bring some pretty severe storms to certain areas, snowfall in others, and a couple of pretty strong low pressure systems along the way as well. Let's dive into things, and as we take a look at later on tomorrow afternoon, and what we see here is that there is, in the four corner states, some snowfall, some rainfall, much lighter in this area. We still have some thunderstorms lingering across the deeper south areas such as Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and even down through Florida. Meanwhile, we've gone through 70s and 80s for most folks in the east, but we have this really brutal cold air mass here that is moving in, and this is going to lower things down to below average temperatures. We've been about 20 plus degrees above normal in a lot of areas. It's been very, very pleasant, but we're going to see a 20 to 30 degree temperature flip coming up very, very soon. Let's just move this towards Sunday afternoon on March 17th, and we see this cool down has made some progress as it's reaching deeper and deeper south over time. We do have some snowfall showers across the Great Lakes and into the northeast. We have some other thunderstorms and heavier showers across the deeper south that are moving along in this type of a direction. Let's keep going towards Monday afternoon, and finally we get rid of the storms, but we're just continuing to get colder and colder as this trough is getting deeper and deeper. It is now really extending into the Gulf states, so for the Ohio Valley, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Upper Midwest, and Great Lakes here, expect pretty decently cold temperatures for this time of year. Especially if you're comparing it to what we've been going through for the past week, it's going to be especially kind of impactful, just the change that we're undergoing here. Tuesday afternoon on March 19th, we're finally seeing this cool down kind of lift up, so it's starting to lose the battle, and this is how a lot of these springtime cool downs go, because the push from the warmth to the south is actually considerably stronger. Obviously, no real surprises there, but in March, late March especially, we're going to see a lot more of this springtime warm and humid push from the south than we would in, let's say, January, February timeframe. So that is really helping for these cooldowns to not be able to really just freely infiltrate the area. They are receiving some pushback for sure. Let's take a look at Wednesday on the 20th, and same story. I mean, we have this pretty flat trough here, still bringing some cooler temperatures to the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast here. But now we see that the kind of central plains and southeast areas are beginning to warm still. Let's take this towards Thursday on the 21st, and something interesting is definitely happening on this frame in particular. One thing is that we do have another storm system moving on to the northwest. So we see about 1,004 millibar low pressure center, kind of hard to read. It's something in the 1,000-ish millibars. We see that there is some thunderstorm activity for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana there. As again, we have this warm and humid push to the north. This obviously creates a lot of instability, especially when we have this colder, drier air mass to the north with this more humid and warm air mass to the south. When these are kind of conflicting here, you're definitely going to expect to see some thunderstorms flare up from that instability. We learned very early on that cold and warm mixing is what creates a lot of this nasty weather, and we're seeing it on screen here. Friday the 22nd, we see a lot of this activity is pushed further eastward, now encompassing some of the plains still, but now as far eastward as North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida there. Even a low pressure system perhaps trying to form somewhere within that. This is a pretty big transition here. This is the 22nd, so we're taking a look at about a week from today. And what we see happening is that there is a cool down followed by some storminess out west. So we're seeing snowfall for the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, and even the Rockies here. But the bigger story is this trough that is trying to develop, because this should encourage the warmth to continue to expand northward here out east as we see this trough digging into the west. Let's see what ends up coming of this, but by Saturday, we're surely seeing that happen here as more snowfall out west is taking place, again, that mountainous west area, as well as the Rockies. So we're definitely seeing some more widespread snowfall by Saturday the 23rd. And by Sunday here on the 24th, what we see happening is a very expansive trough climbing very vertically through the plains, and then a ridge that is now fully encompassing the east for the most part. Even receiving more reinforcement here as we have a warm front to the east. So this is likely going to lift up as well and cause even warmer temperatures for these areas. Keep in mind that thunderstorms are possible in here, heavier showers, but also as there is still some cold air that is trying to move out, but it is still here a little bit by this point. We did see this model hint at perhaps some mountainous wintry weather to start things out, especially by Saturday morning. As you can see, we see mountainous Virginia, West Virginia, in through Maryland and Pennsylvania, perhaps seeing some flakes flying during all of this. Now, what we see at the end of the model run here, because this is as far as we get, we have this low right here, nearby Washington, D.C. area, again, progressing northward, and now your ridge is really encompassing a lot of the east here. But this low out west, 985, we have snowfall very vertical here, as you can see, throughout some of these plain states like the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas. But not only that, it's also kind of absorbing that low to the east where we have this warm front dynamic and then cold front dynamic under here. So this is your warm sector, is what we'll call it here, to the east underneath this warm front. And then this cold, dry air is trying to swing underneath and hit it from the side. This could create another pretty violent severe weather outbreak if we do see a storm like this take place for Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Gulf states down here. And this is only the beginning. This is the end of the model run, so we can't see any further than this. But I'm sure that this storm would progress towards the northeast, and we would see this severe weather kind of expand from that point forward and bring perhaps thunderstorm activity and maybe even severe weather further eastward after this point. So we're looking maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 26th, 27th, 28th when I say that. Let's take a look here at the GFS model, which does get further out, by the way, so we will be able to see what ends up coming of all this. Here's that massive, massive cool down here that we're seeing upcoming by Monday on the 18th. Again, kind of becomes flattened and then eventually warms up, and then we get this storminess in there. The GFS model brings more cold air in than what the European model showed. And we're even seeing this low to the northeast bring some snowfall as a result of all of this activity. Let's keep going. And here's that Central Plains storm that the European model had. Again, 989 millibar low pressure center over Missouri. A bit of a warm front, cold front dynamic, but it's pretty messy. I mean, we have just this blob of storms happening as a result of this low. So a little bit less organized here. Probably would be less impactful because of that. Hard to say for sure. But we do see that storminess kind of continue over the east. And look at this as well. We have this low up in Canada, cold front stretching down the entire eastern seaboard. Could be some folks' first thunderstorm event if we did see this happen, such as what we're seeing here. This looks like potentially some stronger thunderstorm activity from the Gulf states through the mid-Atlantic and even into portions of southern New England, perhaps. So we're expanding further and further north with this thunderstorm potential every single time we see one hit because we're reaching further and further into the spring. Also, I mean, we get this storm here around the 30th popping up for the upper Midwest, bringing heavy snowfall to Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then also underneath it, we have kind of that cold front look with perhaps thunderstorms for some of these areas in here. Even getting another one forming over the deep south at the end of this model run on the 31st. Already popping up with some thunderstorms here to the east of it, some snowfall to the northwest. We're already getting signs that we're going to have more and more and more of these severe weather events, and honestly, at its bare bones, just strong low pressure systems moving across the nation with cold fronts. So really the interesting thing here is we get these really violent warm-ups like we saw just recently. I mean, we pushed 84 degrees in Southeast Virginia just yesterday where I'm at. So highly above average temperatures, and we're seeing these swinging cold fronts hit that and really cool things down. But that's obviously a pretty violent transition to go from 85-ish degrees down to the 50s and even 40s and 30s as lows. I mean, that is a very, very violent switch, and that is what really curates some of these early season severe weather events. And I call it early season, especially if you're east of the Appalachian Mountain Range here. These areas see thunderstorms later in the year typically. So for anywhere east of those Appalachian Mountains to see thunderstorms and any sort of activity like that, in this time of year, March, April is considered very early. Our heart of our thunderstorm season and severe weather is actually in June and July here on the East Coast. For areas in the plains, though, however, I mean, March is still a little bit early. It's not unheard of to see activity, but usually you expect April, May to be when that activity really sets in. We've been getting a couple of pretty impactful severe weather events here, and I would consider it to be earlier than normal to be seeing this much activity. And we're just now reaching the halfway mark of March, so certainly on the earlier side of things. The total precipitation here, we see a lot for the Northwest. Also quite a bit for the plains as we get some activity in there. And then for the deeper south, through the kind of Gulf states and into the southeast, even expanding as far northward as the mid-Atlantic, we see highly above average precipitation in this corridor, looking at maybe 2 to 5 inches of precipitation, maybe even more over the next 10 days, which is certainly a whole lot, especially considering that many of these folks have had above average amounts in March already. The total, or better yet, total snowfall on the European model, mountainous west sees a whole lot, the plains see some, and even the northeast and mid-Atlantic get a little bit here, especially in the mountains. So I would say average snowfall over the next 10 days on this European model. The GFS model, still a lot out west, nothing outside of the norm, I would say. And then your upper Midwest and northern plains area here, highly above average snowfall, as we see multiple heavy snowfall events over the next 15 days, according to the GFS model, that is. I don't know how much of that is actually going to fall. I think this is definitely on the upper end of things. I think that we will see less than this, but perhaps more than the European model. So something between the two is a more likely outcome. And then the East Coast looks pretty similar. We're seeing a little bit less here on the GFS, but I think that this is pretty realistic. I think that for these mountainous areas of Adirondacks, Green Mountains, White Mountains here, we could see a little bit less than what this is showing. Call it maybe 6 to 10 inches total for those mountaintop locations. And then some of these other mountains like Pennsylvania, down through West Virginia, even some low-lying areas like eastern Ohio, and then southwestern New York, you know, maybe 2 to 6 inches is a little bit more realistic if we see any, of course, because there isn't any storms, you know, tomorrow happening. So this is certainly something that can still change. The temperature pattern is interesting, like I mentioned. I mean, we have these really intense warm-ups. Here's today, and these are those very warm temperatures I was referring to earlier. Here we're looking at maybe 20 plus degrees above normal. But watch it how this cold just really, really dives in, full-blown Arctic blast into the east. And look at that. I mean, we go from 20 degrees above normal to perhaps 10 to 15 degrees below normal, even in these blue areas in here for the Gulf states, looking at 20 to 25 degrees below normal. So for some areas, maybe even pushing 30, 40, or even 50 degree temperature swing from those highly above normal temperatures down to those highly below normal temperatures. Again, a very, very violent switch up. After this, we get a pretty brief warm up that wants to take place. Kind of an Arctic blast hits at the same time. So we have multiple things happening at once. But look at this, right at the end of the model run, we have this really progressive cold front that's developing where we have very, very warm temperatures right to the east of it and very, very cold temperatures right to the west of it. So a very sharp contrast in there over the course of maybe 100 or 2 miles there. Definitely not a ton of space between these two air masses, and this will create potentially even more violent instability along this line. So keep that in mind as well. So lots of activity upcoming. Most of it is beyond 3 or 4 days out, so we don't have a whole lot of confidence to go with now, but we are going to be talking about these things over the coming days and weeks. So be sure to subscribe for when these things get a lot closer to happening. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, because we do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon, or better yet, there I go, saying it again. You can like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.